Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
It's your turn,
All right,
and then
so
we'll introduce the next speakers.
I'm just going to take a couple of minutes because I got a couple of things I want to say, and I've been accused of being a cat. So I'm going to kind of read what my notes are here. But today I want to spend my time talking about supply and the overall U.S. market and the need for Canadian, European, South American, New Zealand, and other global supply. The U.S. produced approximately 37 billion board feet in 2022. Therefore, the U.S. consumption being 51 billion board feet, we need imports. In 2022, Canada shipped just over 12 billion board feet of their approximately 21 billion board feet of production to the U.S., which represents a bit over half their production. Europe shipped approximately 2.7 billion board feet, which combined totals 51 board feet of the consumption. However, we can't forget that the volumes of the U.S. exports, which is the reason why the new importers will have room to take part in the U.S. market. I spent 45 years in the lumber business. I know most of you didn't think I was 45 years old, so I really started young. And my efforts have been mainly centered around value-added or remanufacturing business, which I will show you the current operations on this next slide. I don't even do that. Okay, there it is. Okay, so we've sold the company twice. First time in 2005 to a private equity-like company, Leucadia National, and it became Jeffries through a broader succession plan. We currently run 8 operations. We sold 2 primary sawmills in the south to Blue Wolf, and then we've sold the other additional 8 operations to Hampton, which I agreed to continue to run as CEO for Hampton Lumber. We've spent a huge amount of time buying lumber because we're value-added operations. Our shipments would be approximately 500 million board feet with these operations. We've gone through a lot of changes within our company when we weren't so thoughtful in how we would invest in operations. Sometimes we'd invest in an operation that we thought was a good price to buy a facility. And because of that, we've operated 22 facilities, 5 of which have been sawmills, and we're currently operating the grade 8 as we describe them in these operations here. We've spent a lot of time trying to determine where we're going to get supply for these operations. And we've spent time in Europe, South America, New Zealand. We've visited many of the markets that compete with us. I've spent a lot of time on the road, probably more than I should have, particularly since I was never smart enough to know I didn't have to work this hard, which is probably has a lot of familiar faces in the industry here. I think we all share that. One thing for sure, we're thankful, and I know my audience here, but we're thankful for our Canadian suppliers, because we have at least 3 operations that wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Canadian supply. And we're almost 50-50 between the supply we buy from the U.S. and the supply we buy from Canada. And the only change would be the European supply. And we are actually taking advantage of what many people think are as a threat. We actually find opportunity with our European suppliers. As a note, for the value-added operations, there are 281,000 value-added jobs in the U.S. and only 71,000 primary sawmilling jobs, which include hardwood and softwood. So we plan to continue to have a voice in any trade agreement that's created to ensure that our jobs are well represented in any type of market barrier that might be created. We're open market traders primarily, but we realize that the powers to be are going to make their own decisions in many of these issues. We just don't want to be disadvantaged. So currently, many sawmill operators are operating below cost, with Canadian companies now struggling with some of the highest costs, followed by U.S. West, U.S. Inland West, and the lowest operating companies, especially with the modern facilities, are in the U.S. South. Seems like everybody wants to go to the U.S. South. We just exited 2 mills in the U.S. South. The dynamics are difficult there. We had great success, but we build our companies around people. We recognize that people are your most valuable asset. We spend a lot of time trying to ensure that our people are productive, and that's how we became successful in the South. And I think likely we'll re-enter the South at some point in time. The partnership with Hampton after the sale, this last sale, it provides Idaho Timber the platform to grow, stability, depth in management, and to strengthen the company when others, like myself, determine it's the correct time to step aside. My thoughts occasionally think about the day I'll, however, I quickly changed my mindset because I tend to grieve that because this is a wonderful industry. I'm so thankful that at 18 years old I joined Chandler Corporation in 1977. I hate to say that. You can do the math. And we were acquired by Canfor in 1981. I worked for Canfor. I had a rocket ship of a career and spent many days running the roads with Don Kane when we were both young. We tell stories. No, we don't tell stories anymore. But at any rate, I think I understand the Canadian side. I understand the U.S. side. I really understand the value-added side, and I understand the benefits of operating in the South, as many of you do. So with that said, may God bless us as we strive to do business and life correctly and forgive us when we fail.
Well said.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup, Ted, for your presentation. Let me introduce Dan Starr. How are you, Dan?
I'm well, thank you.
It's your first time in Montreal.
It is. It's my first time here.
How is it?
Well, I've seen entirely too much of the interior of my hotel room, but when I've been able to get out, it's been absolutely wonderful. So the convention has been great. So folks on our team have been here for years and years, but it's my first time here, and I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And I also thought the restaurants, what little I've seen, have been fantastic as well.
And you can add to your list talking with Ted. He has many recommendations.
I could, but I don't remember the names of the restaurants. But there was one, we had an Italian meal that I just thought was incredible.
Maybe we could start a new part of the website of the Montreal Wood Convention with a restaurant recommendation based on your experiences. Okay, maybe.
That was a warm reception from the audience. They seemed really enthusiastic about that.
You agree? You're in? All right. Okay, so Dan, you're the President and Chief Executive Officer of Do It Best. You've been in this position since 2016, but you joined the company in 2005 as a Director of Human Resources and General Counsel. You were promoted to Vice President of Human Resources for the following year, and then named Executive Vice President and Chief Executive Operating Officer in 2012, I'm sorry, and you are the 5th CEO since the company was founded in 1945.
That's right.
Awesome. Would you like to introduce a bit of your company?
Yeah, I would love to do that. Thank you.
The clicker is right on your left.
Let me borrow that real quick. Thank you. So yes, our company was founded in 1945, and we are a member-owned home improvement company, which really just means we have thousands of independently owned and operated stores across the U.S. and about 54 other countries with a heavy presence in Central America, South America, and Southeast Asia. Our main, though, work is with our members across the United States. And we are among the top 10 of customers for many of North America's mills and manufacturers, and we're driving more than $3 billion in LBM sales annually across the U.S. We're also the nation's only full-service home improvement provider for those independently owned and operated stores. So that means we not only serve the needs of what you might think of as a traditional hardware store, but also we do a significant amount of business for folks who are large independent home centers, lumber yards, and strictly working in this industry. So for us, let me kind of forward a little bit. This shows you a little bit of our operations. We do full distribution across the United States. We have 8 distribution centers as well as about 30 reloads that provide lumber products to our members. And as I said, we do about $3.2 billion in annual LBM sales, and we are the single source solution for a great many of our members. If you look across the United States, many of those members you would see carrying our brand, which is Do It Best, which you can see in this picture. Many, though, do not. Many of them carry their own brand. So we are a cooperative but you could look across the United States and see many of our members, and they fly their own flag. Many of them, though, use our brand as well. That's just a short picture of who we are.
All right. Thank you very much.
You
Thank
bet.
you.
Sit down.
And Russ, how are you doing?
I'm well, thank you.
Yeah. So it's not your first time in Montreal?
Definitely not.
No.
Yes.
Okay. And your team was here previously to many editions, but it's your first time and on stage.
Yes.
First time to the convention and on stage.
And I'm not nervous at all.
Thank you for being here. You're the Chief Executive Officer of Taiga Building Products. A few words, and then I'll let you introduce the company. You were appointed the CEO in 2021. You grew up in the building materials business, starting out working in your family's roof truss business in Alberta.
That's correct.
How old were you when you started?
I was 12 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what job did we give you at the time?
The worst jobs, the worst jobs.
Like?
Oh, picking up all the trash, that sort of stuff. But I did get to drive the forklift. Don't tell the health and safety people.
But that's good. You started, and then you're the CEO of your company, the company Taiga. Awesome. So you began working your way up the ranks with a manufacturer of engineered wood products, and then you made the transition to working in wholesale in 2008. I'll let you introduce for the next part.
Absolutely, thank you. Well, I think this is probably the highlight of the week, largely because you get to listen to a wholesale distributor tell a room full of manufacturers how to run their business for a while. So I won't linger on that. Here's just our mission statement at Taiga. I know you're reading that and you're thinking, how sexy and snappy is that? But that's who we are, a very simple company. We're very focused on execution. We want to do the little things right, and if we do all the little things right, it will add up to doing everything right. We try our best every day to do that. I won't read our mission statement off for you. You can see it up there on the screen, but it's a reflection of who we are, and those of you who do business with us today, I hope that's how you see us, and if you don't, I'd love to talk to you about why not. We'll work on that. A little bit about us, if you don't know anything about the company. We have 18 sales and distribution locations, mostly, as you can see on the map, across Canada and in all of the major urban centers, as well as up and down the I-5 corridor in the U.S. We have 4 wood preservation facilities, so one in Langley, BC, one in Edmonton, Alberta, one in a little place called Minettville, Ontario. If you ever get up there, there's a sign right before our plant that says, "Welcome to Minettville." You drive past the plant, you see about 3 houses, and then it says, "Thanks for coming." So that's what you're going to see there. And then in Washougal, Washington, which is, for those of you who aren't familiar with the area, that's the greater Portland area. We're across the Columbia River, just on that side. We have about 550 employees, give or take. That varies by season, of course, because we are a very seasonal business here in Canada. We carry about 5,500 SKUs today. I think we say 5,000 on our slide, but give or take 5,500 different SKUs. We run the gamut of lumber and building materials with a heavy focus on commodities, obviously. That's about half of our business. Pure commodities are about half of our business today. The balance of the business would be in other LBM materials, ranging from Johns Manville insulation. We're Trex's national distributor in Canada. We have a flooring line, a house-branded flooring line, molding and millwork, a number of products under that banner. In 2002, we're a public company, so I'm allowed to tell you all this stuff. In 2002, our revenue was $2.19 billion. That's top line. With the way lumber prices are this year, I'm hesitant to tell you what that number might be this year, but we're hoping to grow volume. And we're traded on the Toronto Stock Exchange under TBL. Feel free to have a peek. And if you have any questions, direct them to our CFO. A little bit about our capacity. I know this is an industry. I came from a manufacturing background prior to getting into distribution, and it was a bit of an adjustment, but I always thought in numbers and capacity, and distribution didn't think that way. We thought in space and orders, which is a good way to think about the business. But we've thought a little bit about what is our in quotes, capacity as a business. And I'm not sure we yet fully understand that, but we run about 1,400, using historical data, we run about 1,400 Super Bs per month that we ship. We have a lot of logistics and employ for us. At one time, we did a small study trying to determine how many operating vehicles we had running for our company at any given moment. And we figured we have about 230 to 250 trucks at any given moment looking after our business if you just stop the clock on any day. So a lot of movement of goods for us. We have about 765,000 square feet of warehouse space, over 100 acres of raw land that we do business on. We process about 45,000 lines of orders every month. And if you look there and you see the picture, we've got one of our facilities lined up, and one of the things we're very proud of is you'll see these orange cones in our yards, and that's our warehouse management system indicators there. So all of our warehouses have been automated as of 2020, and I think we're the first in our space to get a complete automation done, and we're pretty proud of that. We've improved our accuracy and our performance as a company, and we think that will just go further in meeting that mission of being the most reliable and efficient distributor in North America. So we'll continue to work on that. That's our job, and that's what we'll do. I promise you I'm not a commodity expert. Our commodity experts are here. So what I'll share with you today is our high-level thoughts and what we think about the commodities business as it going forward. But if you want a real deep dive into how we see the commodities today, don't be afraid to catch up with our team. They're here in the room, and I'll do my best to answer your questions.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Where's the CFO? Where's the CFO?
He's not here. No,
okay.
He's back at home. He's not dumb enough to show up to one of these things.
All right. Let me introduce André Beaulieu. How are you, André?
Very good.
Very good. You'll be the moderator of the discussion. Maybe a few words to say that you've been in the industry for many years. Actually, you're the sales director at JD Irving Limited. You've joined the Irving Sawmill Group in 1996, where you managed the value-added initiatives. You held numerous positions with the company since then, marketing manager, director, or retail sales responsible, etc. I want to mention that you're currently the chairman of the Lumber Properties Steering Committee of the Canadian National Lumber Grades Authority.
Yes.
It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you very much. I thought I was going to be the first one to start this thing here. So I had a nice paragraph that it would have sounded something like this: welcome to the main event. But since we're already 25 minutes in, I'm just going to scrap the first paragraph here.
André, just a second to say if there are people at the back who would like to sit, because we have at least an hour of discussion ahead, you can just walk through the aisles and there are seats on the sides. Please feel free to come up. Okay, so André, you deserve your round of applause, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you. There's a lot of knowledge here, and then there's me. So we're going to try to share with you our knowledge, our experience, and hopefully you can take something out of this and go back to your businesses and make life a little easier for you. So that was the goal when we started talking about all this. So I'm going to just jump in here, and we're going to start with the economy. That's a big one. And then you had a couple of things you wanted to talk about there. But, so where do you see the U.S. economy going, and how is it affecting you today?
It's a big topic. It's weighing on everybody's minds. And if you don't mind, I'll just push this back for a second and stand as well. André, have you ever heard of confirmation bias?
Yes.
Do you know what that is? I want to avoid falling into that trap that what you see and what you perceive, you pick and choose those things that reinforce what you already believe. There's a danger anytime I start talking about the economy because I'm at risk of a little bit of confirmation bias. But I do expect to see still that soft landing and a rebound. And I think there's a couple things that lend themselves to that. One, you've got sort of the existing economic conditions that prevail right now within the U.S. But then I think stretching out underneath that and going a whole lot longer are the underlying sort of influences, demographics, and elements that lend themselves to the long-term picture within the United States. I've spent more time over the course of the last 4 months speaking to more economists than I want to, trying to figure out how in the world do you budget going forward. After 2-3 years of incredible volatility, how do you even begin to budget? What is the new normal? What should you really expect? So a couple things that I would look at in the short term. I think that as we look at the present state of the economy, yes, I do see that in our industry, we're going to continue to see a little bit of slowness. So we already see the fact that permits in the U.S., that housing starts in the U.S. are worse than anemic. And I think that that's going to continue in the short term. So we see a fair amount of activity that might still take place within repair, remodel, within maybe multifamily, because some of those contracts, some of those commitments are more planned in advance. And so there is some activity, but of course, when U.S. economic policy, or at least monetary policy, is driven by our Federal Reserve, and they've taken such an aggressive hand at raising interest rates, it did what they designed it to do. It cooled everything off. It, in effect, shut things down in the United States. You've got an entire generation of people who believe that anything north of 6% is outrageous. They've never seen anything like this before, and they're the new home buyers. And so I think that it has blunted behavior, and it will continue to do so until it finds a settling place. When it finally does reach that new normal, one of the things that concerns me, so that feeds into that sort of mild recession, right? I think everybody is projecting that, and I do think that it's real. I think we're already seeing the signs of that. And so I do certainly buy into that notion. The more longer term, though, I just look at the demographics in the United States. It's nowhere near what was going on in 2008, 2009. It's just not the same set of circumstances. We look across the major areas that our members serve, the major communities that our members serve, and there really isn't much of a housing inventory to speak of in any of them. And we still have all those demographics that gave rise to the housing crisis. It's not gone away. It's just been artificially suppressed with all that interest rate movement. And so the demand is still there. It's still under the surface. I think it's still going to come. And my fear is that it'll come so fast once we finally do get that settling point, right? Once interest rates finally find their way and we work through some of those recessionary things. The concern that I have is that there'll be a match struck somewhere along the way, and then we will see demand just rip, and it'll produce some of the same effects that we saw over the course of the last 2 years. I hope it's not as dramatic, but that's part of my fear, is that when it finally does recover, all that pent-up demand will produce some really distorted results, and we'll be right back on that roller coaster that we've been on the last couple of years. That's a little bit of a fear. I hope that I'm wrong. It would be great if we could have steady, measured, increased demand, but I just don't see it. I see more volatility in the future.
What do you think is that magic number there for the interest rates?
Yeah, it might be the prevailing rate, not what the Fed is doing, but it may be that the prevailing rate goes up to, I've seen a lot that are in the 7 to 8% right now. Maybe it settles and goes back down to 6.5 or so. I don't know exactly, but it seems to me that when it retreats and finds a little bit of stability, then you'll find a lot of people coming off the sidelines. That's what I would expect.
Do you see regional activity different throughout the country? Is there certain areas that are harder than others?
I do think that there are. I do think that there are certainly regional differences, but I see more commonality than I see pronounced differences. I do think that there are regional differences, but what I see, at least from our members that we serve, is you've got a whole lot of people with buying responsibility and buying capacity. And if you were to flash back 12, 13 months ago, almost all of them with that responsibility would be thinking in terms of, boy, if you can get your hands on it, if you can buy it, I don't care what the price is, I'm just going to buy as much as I can. And there was a hoarding mentality that was going on across all of our members in the U.S., and it was producing some wild results. And I think if you come to today, as we come into the spring and summer, which is our traditional, highest months that we have, which I think is probably reflective of most folks, they have an entirely different mindset. Instead, they're taking a very, very conservative approach to their inventory position, and they are not about to take additional inventory risk, not with all the trouble signs that they see on the horizon. So it's less, to me, it's less about regional differences and more about a little bit of change in mindset from where we have just been from a supply chain standpoint to where we are now. It's largely recovered for us, and you've got economic concerns, and so that's influencing a whole lot of buying behavior.
That's good. Russ, where do you see the differences between R&R and new construction? How do you see the dynamics there?
Yeah, it's funny. That's a good question. I think that to piggyback a little bit on what Dan's saying is that what we're observing in the market is a general tone of, and I promise I'm going to answer your question here, but I'll get there in a roundabout way. There's a tone in the market of conservatism right now. And so it's very, very hard if you're not at the retail level to have good perspective on what demand actually looks like, because there's so much inventory rebalancing happening in the channel right now. As Dan alluded to, the retailer is exceptionally conservative right now. I think that's for a couple of important reasons. I think they're uncertain, and that's a good reason to hold on to your purchase order book pretty tight. The other is money costs money all of a sudden, and it hasn't for quite some time. And for a number of retailers, they've figured out it's expensive to carry inventory. And so they're going to wait. And there's this belief that inventory is readily available and plentiful. And so they're going to wait and buy it when they need it. So it's a little bit harder right now to see through what that demand is going to look like. We certainly had an okay first quarter in terms of flow of goods, and I would tell you that the R&R products were flowing as well as the new home construction, maybe a little better. April's been a bit of a pause, and everybody's waiting for that. I'm going to say weather one time during this talk, and then I won't say it again. But everybody's waiting for that spring season, that weather to kick in, and see what the seasonal demand looks like. Mm-hmm. Products like our outdoor living goods and things like that. I think you asked a very important question, though, about what's that prevailing rate? What's that number that, and I don't think it's an actual number. I think the market has the capacity to afford higher interest rates. I think that consumers can handle 6% rates, 4.5%, 5% in Canada. I think they can handle it. What they need to see is stability. They need to see the rate stop moving. There's something psychological about a moving rate that stops people from consuming. But I agree with Dan. Canada in particular has an enormous underlying demand for housing, be it people building single-family homes, owner-occupied multifamily homes, purpose-built rental. There's a massive, massive demand. Our population is growing through immigration. As Benjamin Tal pointed out yesterday, people don't come to this country with their home in a backpack. And unlike my adult children who are still living in my basement, they want their own place. And we need to house these people. So I think we are, this interest rate fluctuation is building a dam behind which there's a lot of demand building, and it will burst, and we'll be right back where we were a year ago.
Thank you. Ted, do you see the same thing on the industrial side? The pallet manufacturing, all the low grade, do you see the same thing happening there?
So from our perspective, when supply begins to constrict, we see the low grade under greater pressure than you would see with high grade. So that compresses the spreads. And for those of us in value-added manufacturing, we're trying to maximize the spreads. So the pallet industry is quite good. And when you visit with some of the large pallet producers, they're just trying to find source of material. And that, to me, that's kind of a gauge for economic activity. And we're all compressed right now for all the reasons both Dan and what we described here. So, Russ, you've got a great perspective as well. And I'm kind of sitting up here and forming my own thoughts. But honestly, I've learned over time, I'm going to live month to month. We are asked for budgets, and you never really know. I can remember 2006, we started, right after the sale of our company, started feeling the pressure, and I thought, boy, we got to make this a good deal for the guys that acquired us. And, 2007 came, 2008 came, we thought, holy how long is this going to go on? So I started creating these jingles. It'll be fine in 2009. We're going to win in 2010. We'll be in heaven in 2011. I talked to our management team, and the management team came to me and said, can you stop that? I think you're jinxing us. Yeah. So, when we think about the magnitude of this situation that we're facing, and more people you talk to, and you guys have really good perspectives. We were one of our former sister companies, Berkadia, which is a joint venture between Leucadia and Berkshire Hathaway, that you can look up, and they have some reports that really make a lot of sense. And the CEO is a friend of mine. I call him up and says, what do you think? He says, we're just guessing. Nobody really knows. Some people say 5.5%, and we're going to restart the activity. But what we have is an underlying depression on housing prices. Boise is one of the top markets in the U.S., and in fact was the top market in the U.S., and we haven't really demonstrated on paper or transactions much of a price reduction. But if you need to sell your house in Boise, Idaho, it's 20-25% less. So we kind of think about when we're trying to buy and sell lumber is how do we maximize the value, and how, I think one of the comments from my boss, and there's a couple of Hampton representatives here, they said, what are you able to do to maximize the spread? And I said, well, you can't have a $600 spread on $400 lumber. And, it doesn't take a genius to figure all those things out. So we're going to live really month to month, trying to maximize the results in each month and try to turn our inventory well. But most importantly, we need to be really well connected with our suppliers, how we can help our suppliers and how we can help our customers be successful as well, because that's how it's all created, this ability to serve others and build partnerships and relationships. So I'm going to avoid the macro view, kind of think about it from in the trenches, day to day, and at the end of the year. We think we're going to be okay with our results in the situation we're faced with.
It's funny, this week, all week, everybody we've been talking to is, the cost structure and the cost dynamics have all changed. And right now they're trying to readjust. The market went down 42, 46 weeks there the last year. And we've always been playing catch up. And today, if you're on the sawmill side, your cost structure is all screwed up. We were running after all the logs we could get, and all of a sudden, price is down to a certain level, and the log cost is out of whack, and now we got to bring it back. Same thing with labor, same thing with transportation. So, we're going to go through a period here of, I would say, 5 to 10 months or 6 to 12 months everything's got to readjust to that commodity level so that everybody can become profitable again. So anyway, we got to stretch to rough waters here. Next question is for Dan here. So Dan, what's your growth strategy at Do It Best, and how do you help your members navigate through all this environment here?
Yeah, so part of our growth strategy is we've attempted to release as much capital as we can to make growth easy for our members. We've attracted new folks to our membership, new members to the co-op itself from other suppliers, and that's been very strong for us, particularly the last couple of years. I think also just in the effort to get additional growth, whether it's a remodel of an existing location, improvement to that location, expansion, or a new site ground up. We've tried to just make our capital easily available to our members. Because we're a co-op, they have a certain amount of preference stock built up in the co-op. So the ability to just sort of release that, particularly when interest rates are on an upward trajectory, it lowers that cost of capital for them tremendously. They're not paying those rates if they're tapping into our capital in order to support that growth. That's been a huge vehicle for us, particularly in the most recent period of rate increases. But in terms of getting them, not just that kind of activity, but their growth, I think, especially as you asked, Andre, that last part of the question, in the difficult waters that you see, how do they navigate through what we're experiencing now, maybe what we'll see the next year? I think there's a couple things that we would either counsel or advise, and I think a lot of our members are already very well understanding of these principles, and that is, first of all, just a little bit of perspective. I think the rough waters that we're navigating right now, at least for them, it's not the end of the world. It's actually, maybe there's elements of a slowdown that will be good for them. They can retrench, they can pull in a little bit, they can manage things a little bit better, they can go through some training and development of their own teams. And the fact is, they've never been healthier. If you look at their balance sheet right now across our membership, I don't know that they've ever been in a healthier position to weather a kind of storm like this. So really, it's just a matter of trying to manage smart in the short term, where you can address some of your cost structure. The labor market is still very tight in the U.S., so make good choices about who's on your payroll and pay them well. And then you'll be prepared for that swing that will come back. But I really think that that's not rocket science. No. That's just managed tight a little bit in the time being, and you've got an awful lot on that balance sheet. Keep it together. Don't take any crazy behavior, and certainly don't go long on your borrowing at this point. But be ready when that swing comes back, because I do think it will be strong.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Let's talk supply a little bit. So Ted, where's the lumber coming from now, and where do you see the supply coming from in the future?
Well, obviously, we get a lot of lumber from the U.S. South. It's going to produce a lot of lumber. When you look at the U.S. West, it seems like the bigger players are going to survive, and it's going to be really difficult for the smaller players. Obviously Canada has hurdles, and obviously that situation can change under certain circumstances. So we kind of see a similar dynamic continuing. We believe that, I think the market share that Canada now is participating in is about 23%, something like that, of the market. I can remember in 2005, Canada was more around 34, 35% of the market, and a lot of that's because of the BC everything going on. I think we're all going to have a period of time of testing, and most of us should have capital. I think there'll be wise decisions made. It looks like the industry has a bit more discipline. Some of the less efficient operators will end up making a decision to not give it all back and shut down. Then you've got all these modern sawmills, particularly in the South, that are being built that would create interesting dynamics. For instance, when we were operating in Louisiana, our log cost was $36 to $40 per ton. That's pretty low, but now they're building several new greenfield sawmills, and it's going to be more difficult. We know that at the same time, Georgia was paying $70 a ton. So all these factors measure into people's decisions, and I think responsible operators are deciding to modernize assets, maybe move assets from BC, for instance, to the U.S. South, which is actually brilliant in my mind. You'll see Europeans coming in and investing more in the U.S. South because it looks so bright. But when you have the dynamics that we have, the U.S. South's eventually going to be under pressure. There's a place for everybody that participates in the U.S. market, and I think people need to understand that because some folks think that we got to eliminate this wood from coming in, or the Canadians, they need to, well, we need all that lumber to have affordable housing, to do the things that we do, and to make the products that we make, because we try to stay off the beaten path in many areas, so the value-added products that we're making don't compete with the commodity markets. So, yeah, I think we're all going to try to do our very best to produce lumber as cost-effectively as we can. That's always the story. And it'll be interesting to see how successful we are in the various regions. I know Doug fir is tough. The log costs in the U.S. West is high in those areas, and we know that we're having issues in BC that are difficult to overcome because of the politics and because of the previous beetle kill and everything else that exists up there. it's interesting. In the early 2000s, Eastern Canada, people thought they can't compete. And now, I think Eastern Canada is doing a much better job of competing. The assets are being modernized. And so all this is changing. And the Europeans will continue to come. They've left the market. So we spent a lot of time in the late 90s and 2000s visiting the European producers, and then they went away. I built an operation in Chadburn, North Carolina, and then to handle the overflow in the European wood, and we ended up having to redeploy that into the U.S. South and producing and value-adding southern pine. So, this market will continue to find its way. And we think, the Europeans will be likely to stick around. I've talked to several of them, and they're committed to the market, partly because Europe is so difficult. They've got their own, maybe even a deeper recession than what we may experience. So some of the smaller players are already sitting to the sidelines. So it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out, Andre. That's a complicated question, but those are my thoughts based on what I know and what I see, and we source a lot of lumber.
Yes, that's right. Russ, from a distribution standpoint here, or a distributor standpoint, what's your perspective on sourcing? And are you using a global approach or more of a regional approach? Or
we look at sourcing really based on need. So when we look at products, we think about what need is there in the market, and where can we find the most adequate supply of that? And that's not necessarily a short-term consideration, it's a long-term consideration. We think about going where the wood basket is taking us. To Ted's point, you can fight this trend, but you can see them happening right in front of us. So to talk specifically about SPF lumber, if you've tied your future to BC SPF lumber, you've got to be asking yourself some really hard questions. What is the future of it? It will always be there, but it's changing rapidly. And so I think, as a company, we think about where's the wood basket taking us? And to some extent, that's taking us more global. We also have a number of other products inside our portfolio that are non-wood product. They're wood-based, but they're not necessarily pure commodities. Think of things like millwork, flooring, and stuff like that. And for years, we have sourced that offshore. We just haven't been competitive as producers in North America of those things. And so we've gone there. But again, we pay very close attention to where the wood is taking us. You've got millwork coming from South America because that's a great place to produce ratty out of pine and species like that, where you can they turn out much better millwork at the right cost. That's the kind of thing we will look at. But I think the pandemic also exposed just how fragile our supply chains are. And it does have people questioning the concept of onshoring. Should we be bringing some of these things back home? I can tell you, as soon as the supply chains normalized, we all forgot about that. We moved back to cost as the measuring stick generally as an industry, but it is something I think we need to think about.
Dan, you want to throw your opinion here?
Very limited comment. I just, listening to both of those points, I wouldn't try to step in and provide another explanation for some of the underlying causes of what we see. I agree with all the observations that have been made. All I can do is reinforce the effect. We see the same things. For our members, we see a big shift, from Canadian SPF to the Southern Yellow Pine. We see sort of the downstream impacts of some of those things. The causal elements of that, I think that they're probably well stated already, but we do see it playing out with respect to our members.
Yeah. So, Russ, you and I had a good discussion here a month ago on information disconnect, and I was fascinated by your comments. So, what are you doing at Taiga here to try to see through all this fog here and get the right information? Oh
boy, okay. There's a lot to unpack, so I promise not to get too theoretical.
You got 2 minutes.
I got 2 minutes. Okay, let me. Instead of not saying all, I'm going to just speak really fast. When you look at our industry, and this is going to sound excessively self-critical, but I want to start with the caveat that I believe in this industry. I believe in this business. when I look at this industry and you look at the structure of it, you largely have four major participants. You've got the mill manufacturer, you've got some form of wholesale distribution, be it direct or be it land-based distribution. You've got retail, and then you've got a consumer of some sort, a contractor, a DIY person, something like that. And we've got a pretty well-structured industry. And we've got this tradition of transacting in our business. And what we do is we keep our information close. You know, we all think that the solution is to keep all of our information close, gather as much from someone else, and give as little back as humanly possible. I'm not being critical of anyone in this room. That's how we've built our tradition. And it's worked reasonably well through normal markets, and we've done a good job of that. But what we have between each of those participants in the channel is a pretty high wall. And so what we do in each of our silos is we kind of climb up the wall and dump some information over, and the other guy comes up and dumps some information over the other way, and then we try and all synthesize that and dissect it. And what we have is a fairly imperfect method of having any visibility throughout that whole supply chain. We don't see from stump to store at all, frankly. If I asked any of the mills in the room, do you know how many feet of your produced species, do you know how many feet by dimension? If I asked, how many of you know exactly how much wood you have on the ground right now, if you're a manufacturer in the room? Do you know that? Do you know that number? My guess is the answer is absolutely. I guarantee you that you know exactly how many feet of your produced species you have. Now let me ask you, do you know how many feet of that same product your largest distributor has on the ground? I guarantee you the answer to that is absolutely not. And if I ask you, the retailer beyond them, their largest customer, do you know that? Hell no, we don't know that. That's not a criticism of anybody in this room, because I can take that from the distributor's part and I can tell you I don't know the answer to that for the sawmill that I do business with, and I don't know the answer to that for the retail contractor yard that I do business with. What I think we need is to take those walls and put in some windows, not doors. We don't have to open the kimono entirely, but I think we need some windows. I think there's critical data we should be sharing as an industry. And I think we have to put some deep thought into what that kind of data is and how we would share it. But I think it would serve us well. I think it would keep us out of some of these surprises that we find ourselves in an industry. I think the market expects it of us to do that. I think consumers expect us to do that. And perhaps more importantly, we have an industry that has a massive addressable market. It's one of the largest, housing and construction is one of the largest addressable markets out there. And we've done very little to innovate throughout the entire process. You know, building is largely done and materials move to market largely the way they have for hundreds of years. We still do it the same way. That will attract people with money. We've seen attempts at changing the business model. We've seen this happen. Many people in the room will remember a company called Katerra, massive failure. But the one learning, they attracted about $1.9 billion US to try something out in our space. Others will show up there. When you've got an addressable market that's worth trillions of dollars, there will be capital that will flow towards that saying, this is an inefficient supply chain, and if I can find a way to make it more efficient, I'll throw some dollars at that and see if I find the way. That's the perspective I think we need to have as an industry, and I would prefer, as someone who loves this business, to be on the inside of that decision, not the outside of it. So all that's to say, we've done a couple things at Taiga. So we're putting our money where our mouth is. I'm not just spouting off about this. First things first, if you're going to participate in this data revolution, you have to get your own house in order. So we've invested a lot of money into our own data warehousing technology, Power BI technology, so we have complete visibility inside our business. We've automated all of our facilities, so we know exactly what's sitting where and who's supposed to go get it and when to put it on a truck. It's great for reducing errors and things like that. But it's also really critical that if I'm going to communicate with somebody and share my data, I better have my data together. So we've invested in that, and it's cost us some money, but we think it's worth it. And the other is we've started investing in some integrative technology. We've got the governments are very interested in this, by the way. We've gone out and secured some partial funding from the Canadian government to work on an AI project where we're trying to automate some tools for our customers to do a little bit better job of predicting how their business is going to go in the next coming months, help them tell the story about what's going to happen in their business, and they're going to share that back with us on a no-names basis in a way that we can aggregate some of that data. So we've got a few pilot sites started on that, and we have aspirations of integrating some of our manufacturing partners into this in the future. It probably won't start in commodity wood products. It'll probably be in those non-commodity areas that we start this concept out. But we think, you know, in my mind, if we just take those walls and put in some windows, I think as an industry, we'll have much better visibility. I think we'll avoid some of these surprises, and I think we'll get in on the inside of transforming our industry before somebody comes in and tries to do it to us.
Yep, I agree with you there. On the commodity side, it's a much...
Yeah.
I want to get off this commodity, you know, everything we've been talking about here, and just spend, because we have, I know Karina's going to have her little sign up here in a few minutes. A few minutes on people. People is what makes this industry, and I'm looking out here and I see older faces, I see younger faces, and you know, there's a lot of tradition in our business. And one of the things that we work very hard at Irving is engagement. How do you keep your people engaged in what they're doing? And just to throw out a statistic here, you know, a 50% increase in engagement will increase your results or your productivity by 85%. So it's a big deal. And, you know, I'm going to brag just for a minute here. The lumber sales team at Irving, the engagement score we have, because we score all our teams, is 92%. And the amount of work that comes in and out of that small group, and that I'm the old fart in the group here, but there's a lot of millennials here in our group. But it's fun to see the level of energy. So I encourage you to work on your engagement and with your people. And it's really quite simple. It's face-to-face time. It's looking people in the eye and giving them a slap on the shoulder, you know, and telling them they did a good job. It's personal time. It's you getting involved and making a statement with individual people. And that's, to me, is a big success. We have a thing that we do at Irving. When something, you know, when we had a good day or whatnot, we have a promoter here. He does what we call our coffee run, you know, and it sounds something like this. I see the guy right there. You can say it a little. You say it a little louder when you're in the office there. But, ladies and gentlemen, this is Christian Gilbert. And Christian is chairman of the Montreal Wood Convention. And I think we all owe him a big round of applause for all the work he's done here this week. And I'm looking at the time there. She's not showing me the sign, so I'm going to keep going. So again, the engagement thing is a big part of how you can do business. And I'm just encouraging you to try to do that. The other thing is relationships. What industry do you know that your guy next to you here is going to look at you and say, I need 5 carloads of lumber. And I say, yes, I can give you 5 cars and this is the price. And he says, yes, I'll send you a PO. And then the PO comes in, we ship the wood in 2 weeks. He pays it in 10 days, doesn't even see it. And it gets to his facility another 20 days after, and he knows he's going to get what he ordered. There's no legal contract here. Everything's done on the handshake. That's a very special industry here, and you don't see that everywhere. And I encourage the young people here. This is how it works. You've got to honor your commitment and honor your word. And, you know, all the old people here, they all understand that. Yeah. So anyway, that's another thing here, and I hope to. And I don't know what you guys do in your businesses here to help boost your morale, and maybe I'll just She's not showing me the sign yet. So maybe we take a minute each here, and why don't you tell us what you do in your business to try to help motivate your people?
Right. Well, as you can tell, I'm a highly motivational speaker. So it starts with that. No, we try to communicate. We try to communicate as often as we can. We have a very Canadian problem. We have a large geography to cover, so getting face-to-face with everybody all the time is tough. But we have a lot more tools that we've accelerated the use of through the pandemic. So we use a lot of technology to communicate more often. We survey our people once a year and take that feedback and do something with it. And we communicate around what we're doing with that as well on a location-by-location basis. So yes, we're doing all of those things. I'm squeamish about it, but we're working on doing more of a produced regular quarterly video to replace my old school letter that I send around every quarter. So we're doing all of those things, but the other things are just looking at the things we offer to our people and by the way of benefits beyond compensation. We've got a number of things we do in our facilities. This is a bit of a marketing. If anybody's looking for work, this is where you pay attention. We do things like put gyms in all of our large facilities. Everybody's got a place to work out. We try and do that. If we don't have a gym there, we encourage management to buy the people at the facility a membership at a nearby gym. So then we encourage them to use some of their time during the day to stay in shape. We have wellness channels in our team's platform, and we have challenges that run every month, and people can win prizes for participating and things like that. But the thing I'm most proud of, personally proud of, we started a scholarship program in our company. We've always had a scholarship program, and it was based on merit, and people would send in an application, and we would give out a handful of them. We decided to scrap that entirely. We still do a merit-based scholarship, but additionally, the offspring of any of our employees, no matter what the merit, we will pay half of their annual tuition to a university for 4 years, as long as their parent works for our company. No qualifications required. It just has to be a recognized institution of higher learning, and we pay that. And it doesn't have to be in forest products or building materials or business or anything. It can be whatever you like. We're just investing in our people's families. Highly tax efficient, by the way, because you're not giving the money to the employer, you're giving it to their kids. So it's a great benefit, and I'm really proud of it. I think that's one of the great things we've done for the community that is our employees.
Thanks, Russ. How about you, Dan?
Well, I would start with the culture of our company. Our philosophy as a company is serving others as we would like to be served. And it's not just something, I mean, it is something that exists on the wall of every single location. But that's part of the reason why I even came to this company was I found the people there were so markedly different in how they behaved toward one another that I just wanted to be a part of it. So I think building on that culture, it's a servant-led culture. It's a very servant-led culture. We try to reduce silos. We try to avoid any kind of internal either politics or turf wars or things like that. And I do believe that in a servant-led culture, that's easier to accomplish if you're following that sort of philosophy. So I think that's, and that comes out in 100 different ways. How we engage with one another. I try to have a welcome meeting with every single person in the first 6 weeks of when they start. A half an hour to sit down with them and talk with them about culture things. I don't think you expand or improve culture through email. I think you're absolutely right. There's something about face-to-face, one-on-one communication where you can develop a relationship with people. I think that's critically important. So that's part of it. I think another is just transparent, honest communication with your team. Being forthright about where you are, what you see, how the company is performing, what concerns you, being very clear with them and transparent with them about what's going on that's critically important to the company. And I think I would just point to one other thing that I think is really good for our engagement. Several years ago, we created a foundation, and there's just been a great job within that foundation of getting dollars aggregated. But the point of that is to distribute them back out through a grant process to the communities that we exist in, not our members, but where Do It Best has locations. And those decisions are made by employees. So to me, it's a great opportunity for employees to get involved directly in the foundation and then ties to their larger community. They're making decisions on thousands of dollars of grants that are given out to very, very worthy causes. And it's difficult decision making, but it's been a wonderful thing to tie them. It's not necessarily then to us. It's really the community where we live, work, and play. And they get to make a difference in a way that's meaningful. So I think that's been very good for our engagement as well.
Well, that's great. Ted, you got 4 minutes, buddy.
Okay, so I'm going to take the next 15 minutes. And no, thank you very much. I learned something just listening to you two guys. But so my approach is a little bit different. I start at the bottom like Russ did. And we know that the whole value of our company is based around people. We put stackers in and power rollers and things like that, but we can't replace the people. So I've worked very, very hard to try to connect with our people. All our core people, the managers each make a list of the core people. The people aren't turning over all the time. I write them a birthday card every year. I write them a personal card. It's not an email, it's a personal card. For every anniversary they have, 5-year, 10-year, 15-year, 20 years. We have 35-year people that work for our company, and they wouldn't want to work anywhere else. And we don't pay people as much as some companies, but we shared the profits. They had big bonuses, and they were thankful to see us. Our parent company tried to send us home. They said, look, I started at the plant. I know how people think my life's no better than theirs. If there's one car in the parking lot, it'll be mine. And so they fussed with me a little bit. They said, what do you need? I said, can I use one of the jets? They had grounded 4 jets. I thought I'd get a Citation or a Challenger. They sent me in a Gulfstream to go for 3 years around each one of our operations and talk to them about how we're still here. Let's produce more lumber. Let's take care of our customers. And thankfully, I think we may be the only lumber company that produced more lumber in 2020 than 2019. I would go into the plants. They'd say, thanks for leading at the top, from the top, or thank you for, leading from the front. And I was embarrassed because I'd fly into an airport that's right by the plant and land at Gulfstream 550. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, but instead they came out and they took pictures by the jet. And they were really, really thankful to see us there when some of their friends had either been laid off or management had handled things differently. We shared the profits. We have a life skills program. Many of the people start out with difficult circumstances. And so we help them get their lives back on track. I have one of my top managers, was a felon at 18 years old, dealt a lot of drugs. I figured he could be a trader eventually. He became a great trader and a really good operator. And
You're going downhill here, Ted.
He's 55 years old. I'm not naming any names. I don't want anybody. I'm not running for public office. I wasn't always a good boy. And so, it's I just live with the people. We understand the people, value the people, make sure they know that. We had a worst injury we've ever had, and a lady got run over by a forklifter, lost both her legs. My wife and my daughters and I went to the hospital and prayed for her. She had multiple amputations. We've taken good care of her. People see that when our employees, family members were on insurance and the insurance maxed out. We paid millions for cancer and surgery, and you don't have to tell anybody about that. People know that, and we get loyalty. So I think it's all about the people. And I tell people all the time, because I don't really like the title of CEO, you get branded. I say I'm a blue-collar CEO. What's that mean? It means I understand there are people and I don't want to be any different. I never want to forget the lessons I learned and how people think about the bosses. Some people think differently about certain things. And I was a kid, I wanted to rise in the company for all the wrong reasons. I saw that the bosses came in a little bit later than everybody else who drove fancy a Lincoln Town car in one case, a Mercedes-Benz in another case. I want to grow up to be like you. And later I realized, no, I'm going to do things different. I'm going to wake up scared every day, do my very best, and lead by example. And that's what we've done. So
Perfect.
That's my people's story.
Perfect. Well, folks, I hope that you go back with something and that can make your life a little easier. It's a great business, great industry that we're in. And I'm very proud to have spent 28 years in it. Thank you.
That is just super. Thank you so much for your personal contributions to and all your thoughts that you brought. So we have time, obviously, for questions. We have the flying mic for those of you who are interested to receiving it. And then we can have questions from the platform. So for now, there's none on the platform, so I would leave it to you guys here in the room. Can be a reaction to what we've heard, what you find interesting, what you could implement. React to the ideas.
I'd like to talk about this jet.
Go ahead.
I don't think that's a good idea, but
We never got billed for it.
Amazing. Man, I'm on the wrong side of this business.
If there's none, I would just love to ask you, the four of you, if there's something different you would do, because you open doors to new ideas, you brought things that you are really proud of. If there's something you would do different through the years, and the question is large, can be regarding the people, the business, everything.
I do everything the same.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much.
I think I do 100 things differently.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And I'm just trying to cycle through. I would do. I don't know. I would do so many things differently if I had to do it all over again. And it doesn't mean I'm not proud of the work that we've done. I think that we had the right priorities in the right order. But oh boy, with the benefit of hindsight, in such a volatile market, and so in such a dynamic space, if I had the benefit of hindsight, I'd do a lot of things differently. So
I began doing things different. I was married at 18 years old, 30 years, and all I did is work. And after 30 years of marriage, I was divorced, and I remarried shortly thereafter because I just wanted to be married. And I married the most beautiful woman, and inside and out, and I changed everything. I tried to take her with me. I never took my ex anywhere. She hated the business, she resented my time I spent in the business, and I couldn't repair it. So if I give you any suggestions, be open to ensure that you don't forget about your family. I had my sons, my grown sons would say, my youngest, my older two were more adjusted maybe, but my youngest son told me, he said, Dad, I'm going to see every birthday. I'm going to be for every birthday. I'll see all my kids' sports events. I'll be there. And it broke my heart. I said, I apologize, son.
Yeah.
And making it up to my second family. And then I'm seeing more of my grandkids' games and trying to find a little bit of life balance. So that's the only thing I can really say, to recognize what you've done wrong and fix it.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you.
I agree with that. That's pretty strong, Ted. I think people, when you get the job, when you become the leader of anything, people see you as a leader and they emulate your behavior as well. So a lot of your people will do what you do because they think it's right. If they see you traveling a lot, if they see you working long hours, they'll do it too. And they have to see you being a good role model about having balance in your life, It's great. It's good. That's a good perspective to have. It's my son's 15th birthday today, by the way, so I got to get home.
You have to fly back quickly.
Yeah.
André, it is your wife's birthday today, too?
My wife's birthday today, yes.
Oh.
Wow. And I, too, have a second wife. And what happened to Ted happened to me. Huh. And anyway, but yes, it's my wife's birthday today, so I have some business to take care of this afternoon.
Awesome. She's your priority in the next hours.
Yes,
awesome.
yes.
So I didn't know the discussion would go that personal, but I but I love it. I mean, and you guys know each other. You've known for years. It's good that you can open up this way. Thank you so much for your thoughts. Any reaction, question you have? Personal questions? Let me see. There are tons of questions on your personal life now. No. All right. Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup à vous quatre. Ça a été fort apprécié. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll offer you a gift. So Frédéric Bouchard and Martin Hull are here in the room. Alors, Monsieur Bouchard, qui est un partner à PwC, is offering this beautiful gift made of wooden species. It's maple, cherry, and walnut. While we take a photo, I'll give you some information for the rest of the day. I would like to share some info if you have a minute before you leave, everyone. I want to thank USNR for being the partner of this morning's session, Western Forest, obviously, being the partner of this whole event, and all the sponsors. I won't name them all, but I want to say thank you. The trade show is open until 1 p.m. The lunch will be served in the exhibition area. There are food stations for today for lunch. LBM Advantage is the partner for the lunch, so thank you to their team. And we're running off the convention with the after show at 2 p.m. in the Crown Victoria room. So please be our guest for that activity in the afternoon. And I wish you a great time. Enjoy the rest of the convention. Merci beaucoup, tout le monde.